Superman is a character that was around long before I was born. He's a character who'll be around long after I'm dead. So what is he? He's more real than I am. He's more part of the world than I can ever hope to be. And the idea of getting to almost to work on something like that, what is that imaginative thing that is able to reproduce itself each decade and uses generations of talent to refresh its potency, you know? It's a very weird cybernetic entity, a superhero in a long-running universe, because so many people have worked on it. And they've outlived their own creators even, and yet somehow always a new generation comes along and says, I want to keep Superman alive. And I find that very interesting, almost magical.
There are few writers more synonymous with the character of Superman than Grant Morrison. From their acclaimed run on Justice League in the late 1990s, their seminal 2005 limited series All-Star Superman, to the radical reinvention of the hero's origin in the New 52, and even epic crossover events like Final Crisis, Morrison has penned some of the most memorable Superman stories ever published by DC Comics. All-Star in particular has often been described as one of the Man of Tomorrow's greatest tales, and a quintessential comic for anyone seeking to understand why this character has endured for over 80 years. It's no secret to any long-time viewers that Morrison is probably my all-time favourite comic book writer, and I've long been fascinated by their take on the last son of Krypton. However, a book that has continued to intrigue me for some time is actually the final Superman story at the time of recording. In 2021, Morrison teamed with artist Mikel Janin to create Superman and the Authority, a 4-part series that reinvented the fabled hero yet again, introducing an older, world-weary Superman facing the loss of his powers and assembling a new team of heroes to fight alongside him. Superman and the Authority exists in a very unique place in comics history. Not only does it serve as Morrison's farewell to the character, but its creation is heavily informed by DC's controversial plans for a reboot known as 5G. Whilst 5G never materialised, this relaunch would have seen Superman's role in the DC universe be drastically changed, and it was these plans and Morrison's reaction to them that shaped and influenced much of Superman and the Authority, turning this book into not only an epilogue to the writer's decades of service in chronicling the adventures of the last son of Krypton, but also a commentary on the state of the industry itself, emphasising what Superman means at a time when his ideals were under threat. So in this video, I want to explain the history behind Superman and the Authority, discuss the book's creation and the original plans behind DC's 5G initiative, as well as what this comic tells us about Grant Morrison's legacy as a Superman writer, and how it celebrates the storied history of the quintessential superhero while simultaneously opening the door to a bold and brand new era. Before we continue though, just a quick reminder to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to Owen Likes Comics so you don't miss out on any future videos. In order to understand the significance of Superman and the Authority, it's first important to highlight the book's creator, Grant Morrison, as well as the factors within DC Comics that led to the series' inception. Morrison broke into American comics in the mid-1980s, writing notable runs on Animal Man and Doom Patrol, alongside the popular Batman graphic novel, Arkham Asylum. Released in October 1989, Arkham would serve as Morrison's true breakout hit, eventually leading to them being hired to re-establish the Justice League in 1996. It would be whilst working on JLA that Morrison would first get the chance to write Superman, who, despite appearing in their electric blue form for much of the book's duration, would be a character the writer would quickly resonate with. At the same time as Morrison was writing JLA, they actually collaborated with a team of other creators, including Mark Waid and Mark Miller, to pitch a bold revamp of the Man of Steel known as Superman 2000. This pitch would effectively see the hero's comics be entirely rebooted, and although it was eventually rejected, many ideas from it would be retained and used in later Superman stories. Namely, after returning from a short stint in Marvel in the early 2000s, Morrison teamed with longtime friend and collaborator Frank Quitely to tell All-Star Superman, an out-of-continuity 12-issue series designed to tell a definitive and generational Superman tale. Morrison and Quitely's series chronicles the Man of Tomorrow's final year on Earth, as he discovers he's slowly dying in the book's first issue, and we watch him both grapple with his mortality and attempt to solve as many of the world's problems as possible. All-Star Superman is often regarded as one of the best Superman comics of all time, and amongst the best written comics of any character in the entire 21st century. But it's worth highlighting that this comic was also a deeply personal one for Morrison, as the writer's father had recently passed away due to cancer, with Grant being candid about how this loss influenced their take on Clark Kent's final days. Following All-Star's conclusion in October 2008, Morrison would write the 7-issue crossover event Final Crisis, while continuing to write the ongoing Batman series that they had begun working on 2 years earlier. However, Morrison would later return to writing Superman in 2011, when as part of DC's New 52 reboot, they were teamed with artist Rags Morales to work on Action Comics. Morrison's run on Action Comics lasted for 18 issues, and largely focused on reimagining the hero's origin for this new continuity. Here, the writer would restore many aspects of Superman's classic Golden Age interpretation, featuring a young Clark Kent clad in a t-shirt and jeans, and being characterised as the champion of the oppressed. In the years since their departure from Action Comics though, Morrison seemingly stepped away from working on monthly ongoing comics, and instead focused on writing events, one-shots, and standalone graphic novels. In 2015, the writer published Multiversity, a 9-issue series which chronicled each reality in DC's vast multiverse, while the following year, the first volume of Wonder Woman Earth 1 was released, an out-of-continuity retelling of Diana Prince's origin that would see 2 follow-up volumes be published in 2018 and 2021. But in November 2018, Morrison would return to write The Green Lantern alongside artist Liam Sharp, penning 25 issues, released as 2 seasons and a 3-part miniseries. It was during Morrison's run on Green Lantern though, that the initial premise of Superman and the Authority came to be. You see, the writer planned to exit DC Comics following the end of their Lantern run, only to meet with then DC Editor-in-Chief Dan DiDio. It was at this meeting where DiDio told Morrison of their plans for the upcoming company-wide reboot 5G. Grant recalled the meeting and DiDio's pitch for Superman's role in 5G in an interview with friend of the channel Daniel Fee, where they explained,
"Dan basically talked me into it, and so I came out with all these ideas for Green Lantern. He said, well, do you want to write it?" And I'm like, "No." And I go home, and I start making notes, and then I end up writing the book. So he did the same thing. He did the same thing with Superman: The Authority, and he said, "We're going to do Superman. It's this 5G. It was this take on DC, which eventually didn't work out. But it was the idea that all the characters had aged in real time. So Superman was now 80 years old, and that's why he's got the grey hair and stuff. Like Batman's found a Lazarus pit or something, but a lot of them have grown old. And the idea was that Superman was now this super right-wing authoritarian, and he formed this team, the Authority, to take on. And I just said, I don't want to see Superman's not a right-wing authoritarian. That's not how you do it.
Yeah.
But I said, if you would let me do a verse with Superman where he's like a dad, where it's this kind of like he's having to lay down the law sometimes, but at the same time he's only doing it for the best reasons. You know, he's trying to be the dad. And I said, if you let me do that version of Superman, please don't make him a right-wing tyrant guy. You know, it's just not Superman. And so I got tricked into doing the book again, because if I didn't do it, they'd have made Superman a tyrant.
You were like, not on my watch, not my Superman.
No, so not at all. And I said, here's a way to do an older Superman who is a bit more like, he's a bit more outlaw, but without making him a bad guy, but showing that he's still got his sense of humour, he's still got his, you know, even when he doesn't have his powers, he's still willing to fight the good fight.
Although 5G was a highly publicised and anticipated event, upon its announcement in 2019, details about what it would entail were scarce. It would later be explained that the title referred to 5 generations, and that, in the new continuity, DC's heroes would have been introduced at the time of their creation and aged in real time. Morrison spoke more about about Didio's plans for Superman in a series of articles in the newsletter Xanadu, where they claim,
Dan Didio and his writers had come up with plans, he told me, to shake up the Superman books. Plans that included Superman's son graduating to the primary role as Earth's heroic protector, while a disillusioned older Superman became ever more right-wing and authoritarian, eventually assembling a new version of the Authority team to enact his patrician will. Concurrent plans existed to push Supergirl in an increasingly fascistic direction for reasons that made scant sense to me. The notion behind the Superman and the Authority series, as it was proposed to me, was that Superman, who had aged in real time since his 1938 arrival on Earth and was now 82 going on 55, and with diminishing powers, would inevitably grow more and more autocratic as he got older, and his son took his place as a new and more popular, switched-on Superman.
Morrison would express their displeasure at this idea, stating to Didio that turning Superman into a villainous tyrant would be both incredibly out of character and disrespectful to the hero's roots, instead proposing a new idea that they would write, which would satisfy the company's desire to age Clark up without turning him into an antagonist. Morrison states,
I convinced Dan to drop the super fascist direction and promised, just as he'd surely planned I would, that I'd commit to demonstrating in the pages of a comic book series a different way to portray an older Superman who, despite coming across as perhaps more worldly wise, paternalistic, and a little tone deaf to modernity, had somehow managed to avoid the inevitable slide into authoritarian fascism that apparently signals the onset of middle age and parenthood. Suppressing an inner groan, I talked myself into writing 4 30-page issues of a team-building comic, to sketch out this older Superman's personality as I saw it, and to showcase the members of his new team prior to the launch of their own title.
Committing to one final comic before exiting the company, Morrison began outlining their pitch for this new Superman series. In just 4 issues, the writer sought to establish this older version of the Man of Steel, assemble a new team of heroes that he would fight alongside, and set out the status quo that other writers could take over after their departure. As Morrison worked on this concept though, Dan Didio would leave DC in early 2020, with the 5G reboot being officially cancelled soon after. While the company course-corrected, Morrison met with the other Superman writers to discuss how this series could be reworked into their plans. While Tom Taylor would pen the John Kent-led stories featured in Son of Kal-El and Adventures of Superman, Philip Kennedy Johnson was set to take over both the flagship Superman book and Action Comics, and planned to tell a sweeping story that would see the hero battle Mongul on Warworld. Subsequently, it was decided that Morrison's series could serve as a lead-in to the Warworld saga, with Superman's mission to build a team of heroes to solve intergalactic conflicts fitting well with Johnson's pitch of Superman attempting to liberate Warworld from Mongul's control. As such, in early 2021, news broke of Superman and the Authority's pending release, with Morrison and artist Mikkel Janin confirmed as the book's creative team that April. With many fans realising that this was likely Morrison's swan song to this beloved hero, and curious about the comic's unexpected premise, anticipation ran high leading up to the release of the series' first issue in July 2021. And once fans got their hand on the first chapter of this unique story, they were met by a Superman unlike any they'd ever seen before. But before we continue, I'd just like to take a quick moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, Manscaped. Manscaped is the global men's lifestyle brand that is revolutionising the landscape of men's grooming, and they recently launched their latest grooming and hygiene bundle, the Perfect Package 5.0 Ultra, featuring the all-new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra electric trimmer. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra takes grooming precision to a whole new level. With its next-gen dual skin-safe blade heads, not only does it cut through hair with ease, but it's also incredibly gentle on the skin, capturing even the finest hairs and creating a flawless look that's ready to impress. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is also waterproof, has an excellent dual temperature feature, and a handy LED light, perfect for finding those hard to reach areas. Within the Perfect Package 5.0 Ultra, you not only get this fantastic trimmer, but you also get a stylish travel bag and Manscaped's renowned crop soother and crop preserver. So if you want to join the 10 million men worldwide who have put their confidence in Manscaped, click the link in the video description or go to manscaped.com and use the promo code OLC20 to get 20% off and free international shipping. Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. Despite its futuristic premise and tone, Superman and the Authority opens in the early 1960s, as we witness Superman meet with President John F. Kennedy at the White House. As the two men talk, Kennedy asks Superman for his help in creating a finer world, telling him to use his powers to inspire the people of America and unite all the superheroes to ensure the world becomes a better place. Superman agrees and the two shake hands when we suddenly cut to several black and white flashes, displaying the Man of Steel aiding astronauts on the moon as Kennedy is shot and killed in Dallas. Superman's promise of creating a finer world lingers in his mind as we jump to the present day, where instead of Clark, we instead find Manchester Black startled and awoken late at night by a SWAT team. Using his psychic abilities, Black is able to evade the SWAT team before Superman, appearing in a silhouette with red eyes, arrives on the scene and orders the men to stand down. Manchester Black is quickly subdued and wakes up strapped to a chair in the Fortress of Solitude. As he struggles, Superman stands before him. Black demands he be released, but to his surprise, Superman explains that he's brought him here because he needs Manchester Black's help. After wheeling Black into another room in the fortress, Clark explains that his powers have begun to wane and he wants to assemble a team of heroes to compensate for his lost abilities. Ever the pessimist, Manchester Black brushes this off, emerging from the chair and telling Superman to go to hell. As he begins to leave though, Clark explains that he's been attempting to stop an incursion from within the Phantom Zone, but only Black's telekinetic abilities will be able to prevent the realm's population from escaping and wreaking havoc across Earth. Black first refuses and watches as Superman battles the various villains trapped within the zone before eventually joining in the fight, as the two unlikely partners work together to subdue the threats and prevent the incursion. After the battle, Superman and Manchester Black converse, with Black asking Clark about his plans for a new super team, stating that surely he founded the Justice League for this purpose. In response, Superman explains that despite the League's best efforts, saving the world from the likes of Darkseid, Brainiac, and many other foes, he feels his generation of heroes didn't live up to the promise they made decades ago. And now in his seemingly old age, Clark wants one last chance to put the universe right. Touched by this, Black agrees to join Superman's team, as the two men share a toast and draw up a list of potential candidates to join their new ensemble, the Authority. The next day, we see Superman lifting weights and running on a treadmill, lamenting that both his speed and strength are diminishing by the day. Manchester Black enters and informs him that he's reached out to several potential contacts for their team, but one of them has encountered a problem in Metropolis. We witness this firsthand as Natasha Irons, daughter of the original Steel, battles a swarm of digital life forms and trolls. With the help of her father, she is able to defeat the androids though, as Superman and Black watch on from the fortress, both keen on adding her to their group. After this, Clark unveils the Supermobile, with the pair using it to travel to Yemen, where they meet up with two original Authority members, Midnighter and Apollo. After these two heroes are recruited, the next member of the team is revealed to be the Enchantress, who has been confined to a mental hospital and is about to be lobotomized. Despite this though, Enchantress believes that her hospitalization is the result of being targeted by the demon Dazamor. Before the lobotomy can commence though, Superman with Midnighter, Apollo and Steel by his side crashes through the wall and offers Enchantress a hand. With each member of the team now together, Superman takes them to the Fortress of Solitude, where he explains his reasoning for forming this group. However, Manchester Black explains that there's still a member yet to be approached, as Clark tells Enchantress that they need her help in finding Light Ray. As they devise a plan to track Light Ray down, we cut to a group of villains meeting aboard a satellite orbiting Earth, where their mysterious leader explains Superman's weakened state and deteriorating powers. This figure is soon revealed as the Ultra-Humanite, who, backed by an army of soldiers and in the body of Solomon Grundy, prepares to attack Superman once he's at his most vulnerable state. While this threat looms over our heroes, the Authority is suddenly summoned to Dubai, where the city is being ambushed by a fleet of robots. Before they can begin the battle though, the group are ambushed by another team of vigilantes claiming that they are the Authority. Superman attempts to coordinate the mission from the fortress, however he's also ambushed out of nowhere, this time by the Ultra-Humanite. Knowing he's no longer a physical match for the villain, Clark attempts to crash the Supermobile into him to no avail, with the Ultra-Humanite overpowering Superman and telling him that he plans on transferring his mind into the hero's body, before incapacitating the last son of Krypton and taking his body to the bottled city city of Kandor. With Superman now in the clutches of the Ultrahumanite, the Authority fight off their doppelgangers alone, as Apollo and Enchantress are also able to track down Light Ray and convince her to join the team. Back in Kandor though, Ultrahumanite prepares Superman's body for surgery, only for the hero to wake up and attack the villain, revealing that the city's Kryptonian environment simulator had been turned off upon their arrival. The two foes trade blows before Ultrahumanite is shot and neutralized by Lois Lane. However, as the two analyze the villain's brain, they discover that this was simply a clone of the Ultrahumanite and that he's created thousands of duplicates of himself. Superman and Lois also learn that these clones are linked by an alien AI network, with them theorizing that Brainiac is somehow responsible. Using the Ultrahumanite's communication device, Superman speaks with Brainiac directly, who explains that Earth is destined to destroy itself and that he seeks to save and preserve it, but Superman stands as the only obstacle to his plan. After threatening Brainiac to stay away from Earth, Superman returns to the fortress and regroups with the Authority. Here, he bids farewell to Lois, who states that their son John will protect Earth in his absence. Superman turns to his teammates and explains that although Brainiac threatens the planet's safety, a much more urgent mission beckons them. He reveals that he formed the Authority not just to ensure the promise he made to President Kennedy comes true, but also that this mission extends beyond borders and to the entire solar system. One by one, Superman and his Authority will liberate worlds from the clutches of tyrants, solve humanitarian crisis, and encourage others to rise up and follow in their footsteps. Superman instructs each member to pack their bags and says their first mission is to go to Warworld, attempting to free the planet's slaves from the control of Mongol. As Clark dons his traditional costume once again, he speaks with Manchester Black in private, stating that the two of them have another mission, as he reveals an ominous message he discovered in the source wall, as the comic pans to reveal a frightening message etched in front of the two men that simply states, Light Ray is. Although Superman and the Authority was only a 4-issue series, it served as a lead-in to the Warworld saga, an epic year-long crossover written by Philip Kennedy Johnson and featured in the pages of both Superman and Action Comics. As noted previously, Grant Morrison's original pitch for this comic, though, was heavily rooted in another crossover story, 5G, which would have seen an older Clark Kent descend into villainy, before eventually battling his son John. In the years after Superman and the Authority's release, Morrison has provided further insight into this original draft of the comic. In particular, they explain that Brainiac wasn't originally going to appear, and instead, the story's climax would set up another antagonist. As Morrison recalls,
Brainiac was not the first choice for this villain reveal. In the original take, Brainiac's place in the narrative was occupied by duplicate Superman. When it was still a part of the 5G concept and a little more prodic, I had this big daft idea to update the classic utopian Superman story Superman Red, Superman Blue from 1963 by having an older Superman face a literalization of his contradictory impulses towards anti- and pro-authoritarianism. My suggestion was that we split Superman not into Superman Red, Superman Blue, but Superman Left, Superman Right, collectivism versus competition, authoritarianism versus libertarianism, with each half starting closer to the centre, then growing ever more hardline as time went by and they remained separated, with dire consequences for the world, of course.
This original ending would not only see the reveal of a second Superman's existence, fulfilling Didio's requirement of introducing a villainous Superman without sacrificing the classic hero, as well as another Authority team he would have assembled, including several members from the original group. Following Didio's exit and 5G's cancellation though, Morrison worked with Johnson and Tom Taylor to rework the ending to this series, instead choosing to include Brainiac as the mastermind behind the Ultrahumanite scheme, paralleling their encounters in Morrison's run on Action Comics. As it stands though, Superman and the Authority exists in a fairly interesting space. Not only is it a book so closely associated with the editorial circumstances that birthed it, but I also think it's a uniquely personal story for Morrison themselves. Morrison's Superman stories have continuously injected an aspect of the writer's own feelings and experiences. All Star, for example, is a commentary on grief, loss, and memory, inspired by the real-life passing of the writer's father, whilst their New 52 run run on Action Comics reflects Morrison's own rebellious and countercultural youth, through the study of a brash and inexperienced Superman forging his own path in Metropolis. With this in mind, it's hard not to read Superman and the Authority as at least somewhat autobiographical, with Morrison now in their 60s and preparing to depart from mainstream comics, reflecting on the changing nature of the industry and the legacy they've left behind as a storyteller and a custodian of so many iconic characters. The tale of an older Superman now facing the loss of his powers and reflecting on his life's work, questioning whether he fulfilled the promise he made of achieving a final world decades earlier, feels like an apt finale to Morrison's tenure at DC. Having written so many books and touched virtually every corner of the company's universe over the past 40 years, this story feels like the writer reflecting on their legacy and considering whether their impact on this universe was for the better. The comic also serves as a commentary on the state of superhero storytelling in the 21st century. Whereas in Action Comics, Morrison explored a Superman more akin to his Golden Age characterization and All-Star drew heavy inspiration from the Silver Age, this series feels like an exploration of more modern interpretations of the last son of Krypton, as well as common complaints that some readers seem to have with the character. Especially with the knowledge of Didio's intentions to turn Superman into a villain, the comic answers these complaints about the hero being too altruistic to work in present-day contexts. The choice of featuring the Authority in this book is no coincidence, given the team were created in 1999 as a darker, grittier take on teams like the Avengers and the Justice League. The rising popularity of these anti-hero characters throughout the 90s and beyond, and the subsequent questioning around Superman's relevance, seems to be an integral part of what Morrison's trying to say in this series. While it might not go down as one of the writer's most acclaimed works, at a time when the values and ideals that Superman symbolises were seemingly at risk, I think it's important that a series like this exists to re-emphasise what the character stands for. Even when you strip away much of his powers and place him in a world that has seemingly moved on, Superman's never-ending battle against evil and his commitment to truth, justice and a better tomorrow is still just as impactful now as it was back in 1938. And if this message is the final note in the illustrious career of one of comics' all-time great writers, then I think Superman and the Authority deserves to be seen as a truly fitting farewell. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave a like on this video and leave a comment down below as well. Let me know your thoughts on everything we talked about in today's video. I can't wait to hear what you have to say as always. If you're new to Owen Likes Comics, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notify bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you enjoyed this and you want some more, there should be some other videos on screen right now that you might also enjoy. If you want to help support the channel and help me make more videos, you can go to patreon.com/OwenLikesComics or click the join button at the bottom of the screen and become a channel member. Or if you just want some more of me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram just at Owen Likes Comics. But that's all for this video. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and hopefully I will see you next time. But until then, take care and keep reading.